Hi, Zizaran here with another video, and I'm joined today by Grimro, and we're going to talk about PoE 2 and itemization slash crafting in PoE 2, and yeah, what we know so far and our thoughts on it. So, Grim, thanks so much for joining me here.
No, of course, absolutely, man. PoE2 is looking pretty crazy. Really excited to chat.
It's going to be a very, very big change from what we have in PoE 1. I mean, a lot of it is going to be waiting and see, and I wonder how much is like final. What do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about the infamous gold?
Yeah, I mean, so if we're talking item acquisition, the elephant in the room is certainly the brand new gold, right? Something that I think they kind of went on record and they said early on in like the early days of PoE they would never have, but it makes sense that they're adding it. They gave some pretty good reasons. But the main thing I noticed is that the items on the vendors are way better than in PoE 1. And also you can gamble in PoE 2. And they said you can get uniques.
Oh, I didn't hear that. That's new.
Hmm.
Do you want to expand for the people listening? What were the reasons they said for golden vendors?
Yeah, so my understanding was Jonathan said that gold was intended to make the new player experience like a little bit easier because it kind of
Mhm.
makes sense, go to a vendor, you spend your gold, and every single monster drops gold, especially the rares. Like when we were
Yeah,
playing, I don't know if you noticed, but the rares they like exploded into gold.
yeah.
So yeah, like buying stuff with gold, one currency instead of spending like transmutes and wisdoms definitely makes a whole lot more sense and makes that earlier game a lot simpler, which definitely seems to be one of their goals.
Yeah, I personally really hope that part especially is just an early game thing. Like I can't imagine killing like an awakener level boss and being like, yes, I just got 3,500 gold. Hecking poggers. Like that just doesn't feel right to me compared to like, I just dropped an ashes. I just dropped an ashes, you know? Like those are not gonna hit the same.
Yeah, I mean that's the interesting thing as well. But like, of course, we're a year out, as you mentioned. Everything is like super subject to change. But kind of like speculating on what we have seen and what we got to play, and what we were told. I was told that gold find would be viable in the end game. So that is a bit interesting. But I think it's really going to come down to how similar is it going to be to Gwenin, because Gwenin is one of the best ways to get some of the rarest items in the game deterministically.
I'm not a big fan of Gwenin. I've never really liked Gwenin or Gwenin farming, and I don't know, it's weird because I did like Geed. But I also like it was so much before Path of Exile, right? Like Diablo 2 was so long ago that we didn't know better. We didn't know there was better out there. So like what I really love about Path of Exile, and we'll talk more about the crafting and what they're changing in PoE2 later, but like I love how in-depth it is. I love how convoluted it is. Like things like Hidden Quarter's lock were just like, yeah, so now you just do like prefixes cannot be changed, you reforge, and then you can do an annul with cannot roll attack mods. And it's like, what is going on here? But I love that. Um,
Yeah.
so definitely a big concern of mine is like, it sounds like they're removing a lot and taking away a lot, especially in form of complexity, not necessarily adding anything back in. And that is like the number one concern I have.
Well, we don't know too much about the league mechanics yet, but at least for me, with the vendors, from what I was playing, I personally I had a lot of fun with them. But as like kind of like a currency player, all I could think was so it's a chaos orb, right? Because if you control click an item on the vendor, you get an item and it gets randomly rolled, right? So it's basically like the chaos orb. And I'm just gonna sit there with my big pile of gold, control clicking them all in and selling all the ones back which are bad and going again. That's kind of the gameplay loop I personally identified as there's no restrictions on it.
Yeah, I mean that leads us into the Chaos Orb is being changed. Like that is a very big change. For those that don't know, the Chaos Orb in PoE 2, it will no longer reroll the entire item like we currently have. It is going to remove one stat and add one stat. And if I understand the philosophy correctly, what they want is that currency is never removing from items, it's always adding to it
Mm.
or keeping it the same but different.
Yeah,
Um,
so they want you to fill up those modifier slots and end up with a finished item, I guess.
Yeah. So I don't love the new Chaos Orb either. That's why I'm like, oh man, like I'm very happy they're splitting the game because of these changes. Like honestly, like because what if I don't like it? Well, at least I'll have PoE 1.
Well, conceptually, the Chaos Sub is actually incredibly powerful. Like that's basically a harvest craft in one kit in like one currency item. And if it's as common as a Chaos Sub is right now, you can use those pretty pretty like abundantly, right?
Absolutely. A lot of this is just going to be wait and see, right? And even if it's things that I like, even if I'm telling myself, like my future self is telling my past self, I would still literally have no idea until I'm actually playing it at the end of the day. Um, but I really don't know how I feel about the Chaos Orb, and that's an interesting thing. Do you think they're going to keep drop rates similar to what we have now? Because right now we got a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there's no way they're keeping it similar.
Yeah.
I think like current PoE is basically like playing cookie clicker, right? There's just so much stuff on the floor, and I think it also kind of makes the game really fast. Like when you're playing, you have everything so fast. Like all the uniques are worthless. So I think they're definitely gonna tighten down on the amount of loot for sure. But it's not just the Chaos Orb changing, is it?
I can't remember exactly. I know a lot of the currencies are staying. I can't remember if annulment is staying. Scouring is gone. Alteration is gone. What else?
I think those are the main ones: scouring, alteration, chaos. They're like the main three ways to manipulate an item down or change it are like being eliminated.
Yeah. I love alt crafting. I'm alt crafting an amulet right now in PoE, and I'm like, oh, I don't mind this.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and I think they also alluded to the fact that they're investigating perhaps taming down the some of the leap mechanic crafting as well. Because I mean, if you think about it, in essence, right? There's no way they would rework the chaos orb
Essence is dead.
and keep essence. Yeah,
Essence is dead.
it's
Essence is
yeah.
gone. Um, yeah, no, I mean, and oh, on top of all this, I can't remember if they confirmed or said, but I'm pretty sure the crafting bench is gone as well.
They
Like
did
meta
say that.
modes. All
Yep,
right, yeah.
100%. The
Yeah,
entire bench is
yeah.
gone.
The entire bench is gone. I see. It's kind of odd to me that they're clearly like, you know what, Path of Exile is maybe not that approachable for new players. So they realize that, and they're making the vendors easier, but they're removing the crafting bench, and especially the easy crafts, like slapping on 20 fire res here, slapping on like a little bit of chaos res there. Like that is so huge for new players that I'm very surprised they're doing that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a lot harder to make those fixes to your gear, and I imagine you'll be walking around without res cap for quite some time in the acts.
I do think like obviously people have talked a little bit about the pace of the game and stuff being like some people call it ruthless and some people are saying it's like super slow. I do think that's going to be faster because like the gear we were wearing was dog shit. I remember seeing Crypt pick up a new weapon and suddenly it was one-shotting everything, right? And it looked a lot more similar to PoE 1. So, that's just unfortunate, but kind of whatever. It's the same as like their trailers, right? We're never going to see somebody going on like a KB Headhunter character in the trailer. Check out the new Path of Exile
No,
being
yeah,
right? It's
absolutely
always
not.
going to be
Yeah.
like slow motion run speed stuff.
Okay, here's a question for you, Ziz, that I've got. So we've got these vendors and this gold. You can gamble for any specific item base you want, and you're going to get a lot of that. Crafting has been modified. And you can still pick up rares on the floor, albeit they seem to be pretty rare in all the demos that we had. So, how are you going to gear up your characters?
You're probably gonna have to overlevel a lot and trade. Like I think trading, like I'm like there's 0% chance I'm starting SSF, right? Because SSF for me has always been like I'm finishing the game too fast and I'm running out of fun things to do too fast. So I'll play SSF to extend it. And I was initially very against SSF and I was like, great, Snowflake found, not for me. And then I eventually pivoted into it just because I was semi-forced to, just because of running out of stuff. Whereas PoE 2 is going to be new and fresh. I love trading. I love the economy. I'm having a blast right now in Trade League, making me want to play more trade in the future. So yeah, I think a lot of trading, maybe playing in groups. Like I think that'll put a big focus on groups and like auras, like purity of elements. Maybe even having like, guys, can somebody run purity of fire until I find a new glove? Like it might be a whole new approach to games. So that's gonna be interesting.
That was actually a lot of my reaction as well. I do think you're still going to be able to do some pretty crazy trading stuff, but for the most part, you're not like sitting in a hideout making an item from scratch anymore. You have to go out there and find find the item, or you have to get the gold to then gamble for the item and get lucky. Right? You're actually trading for items instead of trading for materials. It seems like, at
Yeah.
least from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I do. It's going to be so curious to see how much is changing. But I also do think, in a way, it's like 2013 Take Two, where they have to start over again And I think even within a year or two, we will be very power creeped up. I think power creep will happen surprisingly fast. But I think they want to fix some mistakes and maybe not repeat some. So it will be a different Path of Exile, I think.
I definitely did get a lot of that early PoE vibe. You know, pre-Essence, before the Atlas, when like you actually picked up items like rares off the you picked up Vile Regalias and stuff like that. Like I feel like you will do that once again. I'll have bows on my filter.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, I just have no idea how I'm going to feel about it until I get to play both. And maybe it'll end up being really, really fun and refreshing, right? How some softcore players right now really love playing Gauntlet, even though that's a completely different experience than what they have in PoE1 softcore and blasting and stuff. Maybe it'll be like that, where we have like, you know, the people that really love it will focus more on PoE2, but the other people will be like, okay, I'll play a month or two of PoE1 and blast, and then we'll try PoE2, like a real challenge and stuff like that, and they'll be very different.
I think it's going to be pretty interesting because, from my understanding, it's still PoE, right? Like for the
Yeah.
most part. And I don't know, like you played Spark at ExileCon, right? That was full power Spark. That was not watered
Spark was
down at
very
all.
strong, and same was the Lightning Strike or the Huntress. That just felt like PoE, like normal
Yeah.
speed PoE.
I mean, it might have been doing like a little bit lower damage because we had garbage gear, but like mechanically it was all there, right? So as I was saying earlier, what's to stop someone gearing up a Spark character and rolling in with their buddy who's an Aura bot, which I mean we know Neon and Mark is on the team, so those are definitely gonna be in and
Absolutely.
just destroying everything. Do you feel like that's kind of like a little bit against all of this combo play that we're kind of seeing coming out from all the trailers and stuff like
Yeah.
that?
So that's the thing that I think. This is the thing where I think it'll butt heads with the community the most, because they seem very against one button gameplay. I really got the vibe like that they at the very least want you to have one skill for clearing and one skill for bossing. I don't think they want that skill to be the same thing. And I could see that even in that scenario you mentioned, I could see that still being the case where you have Spark for clearing and you have like Ice Bear for single target.
Okay, interesting.
But I think a lot of people still will want to play one button builds. I think a lot of people, honestly, like if like it depends how forced it will be, but I think if it's like forced two button builds to the point where it's unviable to be one button builds, I think a lot of people will be like, then it's not for me. Because a lot of people
Hmm.
love that, like the one button builds.
Yeah, I mean, with all the triggers that have been showing off, like in the Druid showcase, I feel like you might be able to get around the one button, kind of playstyle there just by having a whole bunch of triggers. But I guess we'll have to see how that plays out.
True. I mean, I loved the Druid showcase. That was the coolest interaction I've ever seen, with like the volcano from the ground and slamming to make more magma ball comes out. I was like, that is super cool. Very, very cool. And like
Yeah,
stomping on top outside, and it just makes sense, and it's just very cool. So interactions like that, I think, will make up for it a little bit.
absolutely. And we haven't even seen any of the unique items that could potentially be coming out for all these classes as well. And how they're going to rework stuff like Headhunter, which apparently is going to be in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, Headhunter is an easy one to balance, right? If you're not seeing rares that much, etc. Like in Nemesis League, we didn't have that much power creep, and Headhunter was not that strong. It was like 5 exalts, if that. So it wasn't that crazy.
Okay.
Um, are we keeping the Valorb?
I believe the Volop is in. They do have the new art for it, so that does make sense to be hanging around.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely think will be stronger than normal. And honestly, the thing that I hope that they do the most is I hope they manage to strike a balance between both finding items and crafting being strong. Because right now, finding items in Path of Exile is never strong, right? There's the uniques from bosses and stuff that we can find that we know are guaranteed from bosses. But especially on like a level 100 character that's like blasting mapping, what do you even show in your filter, right? Some people show rings for ults,
Mm.
but like you're not going to pick up imbued ones and be like, oh, maybe I'll get a wand upgrade. It's just not going to happen.
So I actually, in the first like 3 or 4 days of the league, do show rings and amulets
That's the
and
first 3 or
jewels.
4.
Yeah, and then after a week, I still show jewels because they can sell for like a div or two.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually do show fractured items,
Oh yeah,
specific ones.
but
Yeah.
that is for
So
crafting.
True, that is for crafting. Do you think that fracture and synthesize will be in?
No, no shot.
Oh.
Oh,
Oh,
maybe,
man,
maybe
yeah.
fractured. That actually
I
does
mean,
work kind of well, and it does make it very interesting with the Chaos Orb.
yeah, it wouldn't be anywhere near as strong though, would it? Because you can't infinitely roll it like
And
you can.
Essence, I don't think there will be
Yeah.
Fossil spam. I'm expecting both Essence and Fossils to be gone. I
I
think
can definitely see Essence being gone.
I think the main game that does both crafting and looting gear to be interesting is Last Epoch, which is like they have a really good balance between the two right now. But I think that's incredibly hard to do. You don't even always need to do it right now. Like items in PoE are very exciting.
Hmm. I mean, I feel like right now, most people are using very similar items. Like you can kind of create an item from a blueprint. Like before we started, you were making an item which was very similar to another player's with fossils. But do you think the uniqueness of picking something off the floor and like having that be the item and there's not really a price tag on it because you can't recreate it without finding something similar. Is that alluring to you? Because that's kind of alluring to me.
So I think that will be a really really cool thing, that there will be a lot more unique rare items. Like it will be a lot less reciprocal like we have now. Like right now on a lot of things, I can literally, like the explosive arrow bows, I just made a video on here's how you can create the perfect bow. Like there's some RNG, but it's like 20 to 30 divine cost or whatever, right? And you will have this bow too. I think it'll be a lot less than that, right? I think we'll have like you making a video being like, guys, check out this amulet I just made. Like that's the only amulet like this in the game. And like I think mirrors will be really, really interesting because of that.
Oh, I hadn't even considered mirrors because yeah, I guess like in the past they were a lot more powerful than they are now because you couldn't recreate the thing that you are mirroring.
Sort of the opposite. It's also because okay, so the upside now is now people are using insane amounts of currency to sure they're reciprocal items, but they are perfect, right? They're like elevated, they're perfect, they're insane, and we don't know what kind of in-game crafting we're getting like that. But before, like mirrors used to be 30, no, sorry, yeah. Was it 30? Yeah, I think around 38 exalts was what I got for my first mirror. And that's because there wasn't really that much crazy stuff to mirror. Like I had the second best boots on the league, and mine had obviously like tiers were lower. I think tier 1 cold res or like Ellie res was 44 or 42 back then. And I had like tier 2, tier 3, and tier 1 res, 30 movement speed, and 74 life. And there was a boot that was slightly better than that was getting mirrored, right? That really puts it into perspective how items were back then. And it was very rare that anything else than weapons would be mirrored back then.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't play pre-essence, so
Yeah.
yeah, that is a lot of info right there. Okay,
Yeah.
because I think things will probably play out pretty similarly, don't you think?
It depends on what kind of power you will get of the items. That's
Mm.
all it's gonna depend on. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think mirrors will be used more. Right now, there's such a I think it's more fun if it's less of a commitment to use.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I completely
Like
agree. Yeah.
when it's like 3 weeks of grinding for a mirror or whatever it takes people, like that's a bit crazy for one item. Like at least back then you could like grind one out reasonably. Um and on hardcore it's a lot more accessible too. Like I think mirrors are selling anywhere for 70 to 90 divines right now. Um And that's because the same thing, right? People aren't spending that much currency crafting them. Like, I wouldn't be that surprised if somebody asked to mirror my bow this league, even though that's like on softcore, you would literally be like Kek W, right? It doesn't even have I mean, I would divine it first, but it doesn't even have triple implicits, right? It's one synthesis implicit. So it's a very different world. Like I've had one of the items someone mirrored off me on hardcore was just a triple tier 1 Vol Regalia with tier 2 int, tier 3 cold res, and tier 2 fire res. That was
And
something I
people mirror that.
identified.
Jeez. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's just like a different world, but I mean, that's the kind of world that PoE2 is kind of looking like, right?
Yeah. I think I hope quite ahead of time, like maybe during Christmas or something, that they start teasing some sort of like rafting or items in PoE too. Like give us like more things to look forward to. Because right now, at least for myself, I'm feeling like they're taking some of that special stuff that out of PoE that I love, and I love the currency system. It's so cool. And I'm a little bit worried that we're going to be losing complexity without gaining anything. But it could be that we're just losing some and getting back in other places, and that will completely make up for it.
So you like from the demo that we played, and we all saw. If you take that experience and imaginarily extrapolate that to Endgame, you like 10x the loot, quadruple the speed. What do you even think a play session would be like in Endgame for you? Like how you like you're gonna get rares, like drop some KO subs here or there, like you know.
I mean, I think it's going to be very similar to early PoE, where I'd be focusing on bossing. I think they talked about they aren't. I don't think they were 100% sure if they wanted bosses to always drop uniques like now.
Oh, okay, really interesting.
And like I think they haven't settled on a lot of things, right? I think they're like spitballing and trying to figure out exactly what they want to do for how things are going to drop. Um, that's something I would be terrified of gold going in place there. It's like, oh, well, you didn't get an item, but you got some gold. And I'm like, yay. Like, in my opinion, nothing feels
Ooh,
worse than killing unending hunger. And like, oh,
uh,
cool.
yeah.
Nothing again. Like, that always sucks to me.
Mm.
I hate that boss. So,
Interesting that you go the bossing route. I mean, that does make sense because they buffed bosses so much and they drop more valuable currency and all sorts of stuff like that. I
well,
think for me, at least. Oh, you go ahead.
well, yeah, I wanted to iterate on that. It's because I had such a good experience um in Legacy League. I was the only person able to kill Uber Ziri, literally. Like there were a few other people that got there and killed one or two, but then died. And every time someone died, I was like, yes, Monopoly. And there's been several leagues where like Dan, etc., was like the only person that could farm, and you make so much more currency. And they're removing logout macro in PoE too. So bosses are harder potentially. No logout macro, very few people are going to be able to do bosses. So if I try really hard and manage to be one of the people farming bosses, that could be really good content and really good currency. So that'd be fun.
I mean, I remember your anime weapon Vol wins strategy and legacy. That was wild. Yeah, I was a big fan of that one. Hopefully, we have some more stuff like that. But from like
Interesting.
a soft core perspective, I gotta say, you tell me if you think this is probably how things are going to shake out in hardcore as well. But I imagine that you're going to be zooming around with a filter with all the best bases on it, picking up every rare, dumping it in a quad tab, and using that mass identify feature that they're adding, and just like setting it to like some sort of a currency value. That's at least what I like. That's the only thing I can think of at this stage.
Yeah, maybe. Like, I don't know. You might even see yourself picking up an item, IDing it in a map, and throwing it back out if it's not what you want.
You
I
reckon?
don't know if it'll be efficient enough. Depends how much gold things sell for in the in game, but I don't know. I mean, it's the same like now, right? Like, I don't want to leave and like it takes so much time to like leave and vendor things and come back in, right? It might be more efficient to just keep going. Like, okay, I don't need this one. So it's so hard to see. Like, we aren't really dropping that crazy amount of rares in the campaign right now, right? You don't get
That's
overloaded with rares. So
I think yeah, each unique boss in the campaign and the demo gave one rare. One. So yeah, they were definitely pretty rare. Absolutely.
yeah, I think the end bosses right now we're around 5 or 6.
Right, damn, that is quite the reduction then
Yeah.
in the demo we
Pretty sure
got.
I've gotten even more from Morale because they've like recently buffed that in PoE 1, right? They recently buffed
Mm.
like Arcali, all of that. Um yeah, I don't know. It's
I mean
so hard.
the currency items we do get will be more valuable as well because you cannot vendor an item for the shards anymore, right? We don't know. I mean, maybe there's recipes we'll have to see, but it's going to be very
So
interesting
my
to.
ideal world is that gold is literally, and this is why I was sad when you said like they've said gold farming will be an actual strategy, and I don't know how I feel about the gambler. Like it could be a really cool thing, but what I would love for for to happen would be that gold farming is only during the campaign. Gold is only relevant during the campaign, and it's something
I think that's what they
like
want.
Yeah, I would love it for not even to be a valuable endgame thing. Like, just like the bases aren't like the endgame bases. It's just for your new characters to make things easier for new players. Then I think it's a really good solution.
Yeah, that definitely does seem like the intention, but you know how things go. Unless they put hard limits on it, people are gonna use that stuff.
Either way, no matter what, PoE 2 is going to be really, really exciting, whether we're going to love it or we're going to hate it. I think we're both excited to see what comes.
Oh yeah,
Grim, thanks so much for joining me. If you guys aren't familiar with Grimro, make sure you check out his YouTube content. It is absolutely top notch. I'm sure a lot of you have been enjoying his reward spreadsheet this league. Thank you so much for doing that, Grimro. That was so fucking sick.
no worries, dude.
But
All good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
yeah, no, it was great. And as always, guys, try to die less than I do.